Talking Auburn football once again is K-Stu the GOAT for Vernon Speaks Sports, and we're going to talk about the Auburn defense from 2018. Now, we like to boast that Auburn had one of the better defenses in the country, only allowing about 19 points per game. But when we really dissect the numbers, especially down the stretch, starting in October, our perception of the Auburn defense might actually change. Now, the first two SEC games, LSU and Arkansas, Auburn was pretty decent, only allowing 22 points with LSU, only allowing 3 points against Arkansas. But when the stretch of October on to the rest of the season started, Auburn's defense started to have somewhat of a cyclical decline. If you look at the Tennessee game, allowing 396 yards and 16 first downs, still kind of on pace to having a pretty good defense. But things really, really started to change when you start talking about Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama, those particular games. Now, if you look at the Mississippi State game, Auburn allowed 418 yards and 22 first downs. They were on the field for about 18 minutes, surrendering 23 points. Not really bad, but some numbers that glare out are the 22 first downs. That's something that Auburn is going to have to improve in 2019 to be a lot more successful on the defensive side of the ball. And two games that really stand out is allowing Georgia 516 yards and Alabama 500 yards. So those things, and 24 first downs, 23 first downs in those particular games, that is going to be a huge challenge for the Auburn Tigers coming into this season to be a little bit more sound on defense down the stretch, especially in the SEC games, because we look at Auburn only allowing 19 points per game for the season. But when you look at the stretch between Mississippi State and Alabama, Auburn allowed 28 points per game. Teams averaged 450 yards per game, and they allowed an average of 23 first downs. That's going to be very, very questionable when you talk about the Auburn defense. Now, what happened to the Auburn defense? Why were these numbers so abysmal down the stretch? Well, one, the linebacker play was very, very suspect at best. Not a lot of success at the point of attack. Teams attacked Auburn on the edge and were very successful. Also, too, didn't get that same production out of the buck linebacker that Auburn was accustomed to when Auburn had Jeff Holland, D. Ford, and Carl Lawson. Just was really missing that piece to the Auburn defense. Also, the production of Trey Matthews was grossly missed this past year. Auburn also started several true freshmen on this defensive side of the football field. One thing that's going to have to help out with Auburn's defense as well is the time of possession. Auburn had a season low time of possession of 18 minutes against Mississippi State. And on average, when you averaged all of those games out down the stretch between Mississippi and Alabama, Auburn averaged 19 minutes of time of possession. And when you talk about the rigors of the SEC, things start to get very questionable late in the third quarter when your defense is basically gassed. They're already, fairly youthful and not getting sound or elite play from the linebacker position and that buck position. Things really start to become questionable. So we want to think going into the 2019 season, obviously Auburn has much more experience. The return of Derrick Brown is going to be huge, especially for solidarity at the defensive line. We expect the Auburn's linebackers to be a lot more athletic and a lot more elite in their style of play, with Zacoby McClain, Michael Harris contributing, and also very big on KJ Britt, who will be replacing Deshaun Davis. We would like to think that KJ Britt is a lot more athletic, will be a lot more efficient between the tackles and even on the edge, with helping obviously on run support. So when we look at this, Auburn definitely has to improve down the stretch, because just allowing too many yards, allowing 450 yards per game, that's just not, synonymous with an elite defense. Also surrendering 28 points per game, not synonymous with an elite defense. And also they definitely have to improve with the first downs allowed, because when you have those first downs, they continue to move the chains and continue to have opportunities to win games. Fortunately, Auburn's output for, as far as points per game wasn't worse than it could have been. As a matter of fact, the points per game were kind of distorted by the 52 points allowed in the Alabama game. So as far as points allowed, taken away, the Alabama game wasn't particularly terrible, but the opportunities that you give other teams with those first down, continuing to allow them to stay on the field with those first downs, will be the storyline for the 2019 season. Once again, it's K-Stu the GOAT for Vernon Speaks Sports, mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. War Eagle.